Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources in health and finance and career. But more importantly, this show is all about athletes transition to sport. It's such a major issue today. We interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their transition into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. And the whole idea is to teach and inspire athletes that there is, in fact, life after sports. So excited today to have Taylor Finley. How you doing, Taylor?
Fabulous. How are you?
I'm doing great. So Taylor, now all of a sudden we're having a run on Harvard athletes, and it's just coincidental. It's not like one introduced me to another one. It just happens to be in this circle here that I'm getting all. In fact, we had last week's episode. We had Brandon Curry, who was a basketball player at Harvard, and who Taylor knows. She was there when he was there. So it's a running theme. So Taylor, we always like to talk about growing up playing sports. How did that shape you leading up into college?
It's a great question. Growing up, the youngest of four kids, I always wanted to be an athlete, was going to be, whether I liked it or not. And so sports really, when people say ball is life, jokingly, but it kind of was. I mean, my dad is a coach. My oldest sister is still a college coach. My brother was a professional hockey player, and my mom was a college cheerleader, which was also a sport. And then I have a sister with special needs who's the super fan. And so all of that being said, we were raised to really be good teammates and learned everything that I feel like I needed to know about life was learned through the sport of basketball, which happened to be my sport of choice. And with that, it's like all the skills that you hear all the time, not only just like hard work, but selflessness, being a part of something bigger than yourself, and discipline, perseverance, all those things, having goals and going after them. Like I learned all of that through trying to be the best basketball player I could be. And my dream growing up was always to play college basketball, and just so happened that it took me to Harvard.
That's awesome. And so what I failed to mention is that once her background too is sports psychology, which kind of leans into a little bit what you were just talking about for sure. And then she is ultimately she's the co-founder of Extra Mile Institute, which we'll talk about later. So going into Harvard, were there classes there regarding the transition out of sport? Like ultimately, did not just a one-day class or a one-day workshop, but did Harvard have classes for that?
No, not that I was ever aware of. Maybe nowadays they do. I'm not that old, but 9 years ago I graduated, but still there was nothing even remotely in the field of sport. Yes, I ended up even going into sports psychology, but I just studied psychology and had to tailor any research paper I was doing to study eating disorders in female athletes. That was all on my own accord. There was no formal classes, training, even sessions that I had attended that really prepared us for the eventual transition out, whether that was just right after college or for some of my teammates, eventually after professional sports. It was maybe something obviously knew was going to happen, but didn't have the skills or hadn't had the conversations to prepare us.
Yeah, and I think that's something that colleges need to focus on. I mean, you're right. I think today there's a little more focus on it, but still there's a long way to go. And I always talk about that if you're a parent of an incoming, you got a high school athlete getting ready to go to school, and you're looking at, let's say, 4 or 5 schools, and they all pretty much kind of match up. But I think if there's that one school that that they're going to educate your athlete not only when they're there, but then in the future when they're done. So I think that's critical too. Is that when you're there, not that they don't care about you when you're alumni, but they're focusing on their players. And then you get done, and then as an alumni, it'd be nice to know that you can go back to your alma mater and tap into some of these resources that would help you as you look at that transition out of sport, if you're fortunate enough to go to the professional level, or if it's just done after college.
Absolutely. That is one thing. I'm glad you brought that up, because here I'm sitting in the athletics department at Gonzaga. My company started here at Gonzaga, and I think although it's a very small school, they do a very good job of providing many different resources for the student athletes to prepare them for life after sport. Have even a series called Life After Sport in conjunction with the life skills programs here. And so I am seeing more and more of this come into play, and it's a huge differentiator when I'm even meeting with recruits here on campus. And I know other staff members highlight that as well as a differentiator.
Yeah, it's important, and I think it's definitely something that's needed. So let's talk about networking, connecting, and talk about the importance of it while you're still playing the game.
Yeah, I think so. The word networking, I think sometimes has like a negative connotation. I think because at least the way I viewed it before is like, okay, how can I just connect with as many people as possible and know them so I can almost get something out of it or leverage those connections. And to me, I think really networking and continuing to pour into the relationships while you're currently in college and playing your sport is so important to just having genuine relationships and showing care for people, not because you think they might be really successful someday or have a high level job that you'll want to get something someday. Like that's not what it's about. And so I think it doesn't need to always look like attending all of the networking events. Some universities do a really good job of providing those resources, and I've certainly joined and attended those from the Harvard Varsity Club that were opportunities to connect with alumni. I think absolutely taking advantage of those is crucial. But I would say where I found the most benefit and value was really just pouring into and investing in the relationships and the connections you already have with people. Hey, asking a teammate, do you want to go to dinner? And you have maybe a more deep conversation with them. Those are the people that I'm still connected with now, 9 years later. And then it's actually funny, just this morning, my roommate and my teammate, who is a plastic surgeon now, she connected me with her organization and we're going to get to do work with them. And it was because she was one of my best friends, not because I knew she was going to be successful in her career someday.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some great points there. I'm glad you did too, because I talk about that all the time. Because I think it's important. One of the key words there, obviously, is relationship. And even going back to high school, I mean, you never know where your teammates might be, their parents, the coaches, and all that. But to your point, I mean, I've always taken the attitude of kind of a paid forward attitude. And
Mm.
so I think if you go into these relationships and these networking events and all that, if you go into mentality like, how can I help you? I think that makes a big difference because, ultimately, like you said, you never know where people are going to be. But if you're not necessarily looking for it, you're looking to help them, it's going to come back your way as well.
Absolutely. That's always what I like to lead with, and that genuinely being the focus is like, how can I help and serve this other person? And if it comes back to you, great. A lot of times it will, but if it doesn't, that's still the most important, is just showing up and being present in that conversation, say during that networking event, of just understanding them as a human first, not what they do. And I think people find that very refreshing, and that leads to more genuine connections.
Yeah, no doubt. And now, when you were at Harvard, were you pre NIL or were you right at the beginning of it?
I was pre NIL. Yes.
Okay, so give me some of your thoughts, positive, negative, but especially now too, because I mean I know there was a big push, especially with Caitlin Clark and some of the other players that just came out, just how it's kind of changed the landscape of women's basketball.
Yeah, I think there's so many different opinions and thoughts out there. I think for me, what I've seen working with many different coaches and athletes now, I think it's a huge value add for some of these athletes at the college level to be able to, earn what they've worked so hard for and be able to earn that real compensation for that. I think there is a something to be really aware of when you're going through that recruiting process or eventual maybe transfer portal and whatnot, is that money can't solve everything. And there are so many other crucial parts of your college experience as a student athlete that will really set you up for success in the long run. Yes, money is important now, and you can do amazing things when they get paid for their name, image, and likeness, but it isn't everything, and it's temporary. And so I think making sure to find a school that fits your values, the lifestyle you want to have, the team, the coach, there's so many endless other components of your college experience that are beyond just how much money you can make. And But overall, I think it's definitely shaped what college basketball, and especially even women's basketball, is and forever will. It's been a really good thing.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that probably one of the biggest downsides maybe is just the lack of education. I think it's getting better because I think just athletes, guess what? Start an LLC, you got to pay taxes. I mean, things they don't think about. I mean, I've heard a lot of horror stories. I used to have another podcast called NIL for You, and we talked about that on the podcast. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. It's also an opportunity to teach athletes entrepreneurship, right? I mean, here's the start of it, knowing how to promote yourself and building the relationships again. We talk about that with some of these sponsors and advertisers that might be doing it. And it doesn't have to be the big dollar deals that everybody hears about and thinks about, the $1 million deals. But I mean, it could be just athletes across all sports getting an opportunity to do some type of global advertising sponsorship.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And the education piece needs to be first and foremost, because there is a certain number of people, a very small number, that are in that large sum of money, but most often those NIL deals are pretty small, and so there's a lot to learn. But even in both cases, how to manage that money, how to make it grow for you, helping athletes develop their relationship with money too, could be really important to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's switch gears and let's talk about alumni engagement. Now, I know you always hear the Ivy League schools like Harvard do a great job of that, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit before. When you were there, were they bringing back across all the sports like alumni athletes, not just for the homecoming and all that, but more for like mentoring and things like that?
Absolutely. I think that's something that Harvard is very unique in the sense that they've been very much ahead of the curve with that and had extensive resources to connect us current athletes with mentors and or just the alumni network in many different ways. And so our alumni they're not all local. A lot of them are living all across the entire world, but would come back for not only the homecoming, but the alumni weekend. We make it a really big deal for Harvard women's basketball, and everyone tries to make an effort to come for that. But also just those that live locally. Kathy Delaney Smith was my head coach. She was a legendary coach at Harvard. And so that's a unique piece. We all had the same coach over like 30 years. She would be that anchor to bring us all back. Even now, so with Carrie Moore at the helm, she does a great job of investing in us and connecting with us, especially those that are local, come to all the games and whatnot, or are available to be on various panels. And then with that, our alumni have made a group amongst ourselves with many different resources and initiatives put into place, and one of those being a mentorship program. And so that pairs each current athlete with two young alumni and an older alumni in a similar field of interest that athlete's wanting to pursue. And so we do some calls every so often with that athlete to connect with them and help them in anything they need.
Now, is that across all athletics or just specific? You're talking specifically to basketball?
That's specific to women's basketball, and I'm sure there's other similar programs out there, but that is something that us as alumni of Harvard women's basketball took on and put into place that we wanted to provide.
That's great. I mean, and I think more schools should do it. It was fun. I was talking to, I went to University of Delaware, and I was talking to a fellow alumni today. And I always bring this story up, and since I talked to him, kind of jog my memory again. We were on a call with our athletic department, and he was a Hall of Famer football player, and then played 10 years in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And just nobody ever reaches out. He's like, "Tap me in. I want to help." And I mean, I think most people kind of want to help. I think a lot of times the alumni engagement comes back to that the proverbial give me money, and I realize that they need to raise money, but there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and that's something I think is important. I'm also finding that a lot of schools now that we're talking to want to re-engage alumni athletes and do the things that we're talking about, like just whether it be the mentoring, like career workshops, just ways to help them promote different things. So let's talk about. I don't know, you watched a little bit of some of the episodes, so I don't know if you know these questions that I ask.
Okay.
They're very easy. Here they come. So we're gonna do a little Back to the Future. We're gonna hop on the DeLorean.
Okay.
And we're gonna go back in time to your freshman year at Harvard. So 10 words or less, what advice would you give to freshman Taylor?
I would say enjoy the moment, be where your feet are. How many was that? And I'm going to need bonus, but like appreciate each day.
That's great. It's funny because sometimes people count. Sometimes I've had a couple of people that now whether they actually because some of them have watched other episodes, so they know the questions coming, so
Dude, I
they
didn't know.
prepare ahead of time. Yeah, that's why I don't. I want it to be a spur of the moment thing when people answer the question. So now, fast forward to senior Taylor. Any 10 words of advice that you give to her?
I think it would be the same. It would be enjoy the people around you and remember it's supposed to be fun.
That's great. I think a lot of people, especially some of these Division I athletes, and nose to the grind. So once it might even have professional aspirations, they just don't really get to enjoy it. And I remember talking to this one guy who he came back for a fifth year, and he just I guess injuries or whatever. But like after he was done, like it was I think it was a fall sport, so he was able to just truly embrace the college experience like in the spring and just really enjoy it and soak it in. I think that's the one thing is just enjoy that time while you're there.
Yeah, because there is so much pressure and you have these really high expectations for yourself. Most often it's like what we put on ourselves rather than from a coach or parent, but sometimes that is the case. And we forget that it's such a gift to get to play a sport with people you love if you're lucky, and to strive for something greater than yourself. We let the anxiety or the pressure take away the joy of those moments because it's easy to say now, and I'm sure everyone does, like you'll miss it later, but it really is a very special time in your life. And I think there's uniqueness and beauty in each season of life, but during college and getting to play a sport is something that should be fun and enjoyable. And I don't remember, I really don't. Some people do, but like the outcome or the score or how many points I scored in literally any game. But I remember how much fun that we had. I remember even like competing and wanting to cry or puke, in really hard workouts. And that's a fun memory now because it was so awesome what you were able to accomplish with your teammates. You go into battle. And those are the things that truly do stick with you and also really matter.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think about it, you're right. I think it across a lot of sports. I mean, for me too, like as a runner, I ran cross country and track in high school and a little bit in college before I got hurt. I think back, I don't really necessarily remember the races or anything like that. It was more about the terms of practicing, the running with your friends, and just the stuff that you did at night and the weekends and all that. Those are more just that camaraderie of the team versus the actual events themselves. Even like I managed a travel baseball team for my son, and going back now, we did it when they're I don't know, let's say I think starting at like 8 or 9, all the way until like 14 or 15. But if you ask them now, like what their memories are, most of them are just about like the tournaments we went to and the places we did and all the fun that they had with their buddies versus actual moments of the games.
Yeah. And I think we talk about this a lot with our athletes that I work with is when it's not that the outcome or the winning doesn't matter. Like it's really fun to win. It really is. But when you focus on the joy in the present and the task at hand and that process, the winning takes care of itself and we're actually going to perform better. And I think the sooner you can figure that out and really embrace that in your college career, not only the more fun you're going to have, but the more successful you'll be.
Yeah, no doubt. So now let's talk about so you played sports your whole life, and now all of a sudden it's over. I mean, you're still playing sports, but I mean, as far as competitive sports, and with
I'm
your
pretty
career
washed
ended at Harvard, what's that?
up now.
Yeah, we're all washed up. Anyway, so to talk a little about your transition out of just that daily routine playing basketball into once you graduate.
Yeah, so I had a couple serious injuries in college. So my career, I would say, basketball wise, wasn't what I had expected or had hoped. That being said, I focused on being the best teammate and leader I could be, and I got to be the captain senior year, and I had so much fun. I wouldn't have changed anything, but I didn't get to play my fifth year because I had my fifth and sixth concussion senior year. So playing professional, that was never really a dream of mine. So I knew this time would come, but I really hadn't expected how difficult that transition out was going to be. More so because I missed being around my friends, my teammates, having a real goal when it came to working out. And I think that was something like I didn't really expect how much your body would change or how boring it was to go to a workout class, or workout in the gym by yourself. I was used to, yelling at my teammates or them yelling back at me and, competing. And that was something I didn't realize how much I enjoyed until I didn't have it. So that transition was difficult from a physical standpoint. At the same time, I was like, wow, my body doesn't hurt as much as it did because I had all those injuries. It's kind of nice. But then I think from an identity standpoint, the transition at first was like, how do I even introduce myself? Because for so long, I had so much pride and, can be cheesy and you hear it before, but it's like, hi, my name's Taylor and I play basketball. Or hi, my name's Taylor and I play basketball at Harvard. And now that doesn't matter. Or that isn't the thing I say. And so I literally don't know who I am. And I think something that was really helpful for me is I did get to stay in sports in some regard on the psychology side, but I needed to figure out where to channel some of that competitiveness, and that turned into problem solving and pushing through whatever the task at hand was at my job of, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out, or I'm going to keep chipping away just as I would becoming a better rebounder or better shooter. And I'm kind of all over the place here, but I think also from an identity standpoint, realizing that I am still that same person that I was when I was playing basketball, but my skills just have been translated to a different setting. And when I say the skills, yeah, it's not shooting or running, but it's the people skills, the leadership skills, the things I talked about earlier, like selflessness, persistence, those things are still part of who I am. And that's the same person that is now showing up to a desk job. I'm just learning how to channel it differently. And then I think lastly, to describe some of that transition, I had a hard time dealing with perfectionism and comparison to others because I thought maybe I should be in a different career that maybe made more money, or I should be further along than some of my peers. And as I really needed to work on, like, everyone's journey is very different, and establishing what my goals were going to be for myself in life and in my career, because I had one goal my whole life was to play college basketball. And then I achieved that and it was done. And I'm like, now what? And I'm not going to set my goals based on where I think I should be because my best friend's there or somebody else that I'm seeing on social media. But like, what do I truly want for my life in this next season was something I really needed to dive into.
Yeah, and you gave so many great. I always come to nuggets of great advice there, and just talking about what athletes face. I mean, the identity is a big issue. Identity crisis. You hit it right there, which most people, whether it's like the basketball player, Rob the runner, it could be Billy the football player, whatever it might be. We identify as our sport, and knowing that you have so many years ahead of you that. And I like the way you talked about just kind of shifting your skills. Your skills are still there, the people skills, the leadership skills, everything, because that's so important. And I think athletes need to recognize that, is that you still have that and you need to take that into your next journey, whatever that might be after sport. So maybe give just a couple of quick words of advice to athletes transitioning out of sport.
I think I would just say be gentle with yourself and patient, and know that you have so much to give to this world, and what a gift it was to play a sport that you love. And now you can use all those lessons and skills that you've developed because of what that sport gave you to help more people in a different way.
Okay, great. All right, so now we're going to get into, let's talk about, so you got into psychology and all that, but let's kind of bring it to current day. So I think one thing before we get into Extra Mile Institute, maybe talk about how your athlete, well, again, we'll talk about that skill set, and for any athlete, how that translates into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so just for clarity, so what are some of those skills that I learned from being an athlete that have helped me in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, and that would help other athletes as well, like as they look to different career paths.
Yeah, I laugh because if I were to think of myself in a corporate job where someone was just like, here's what you need to do and you need to stay in this box, like, that would not work for me. So entrepreneurship was definitely up my alley and I feel what I was made and called to do, because of the creativity that goes into it every day is different. And that's kind of how it goes. With sport, yes, you have these big buckets that you have the same rhythms and routines, and you have to be persistent and patient with yourself and with the process when you're building a company. But also there's variety, and you never can predict what's going to come. Just like you can have a game plan before a basketball game and the strategy and the scout, but like there's always going to be things that come up that you're like, I couldn't have predicted that. But you learn how to adapt on the fly in sport and not get so bogged down or upset because you have to go to the next play. And that's the same thing I think in entrepreneurship is like you're going to make mistakes, or you're going to have to pivot your strategy, and you're going to have to move fast, and that hustle. But if you're lucky, you get to do it with the team and to bounce ideas off of each other and be open to other perspectives. I think, obviously I played a team sport, so I think a lot of those skills might be slightly different than in an individual sport. But I think most of the best entrepreneurs that I've seen were former athletes for a reason.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So let's talk about Extra Mile Institute, EMI. Tell us all about it and some of the great things you're doing.
Yeah, so Extra Mile Institute was born here actually at Gonzaga with the men's basketball team, and they were doing something called personal growth meetings. Travis Knight was leading these 15-minute conversations with the guys once a week. Really what that was a space for them to connect with one another, talk about things that really mattered to them as humans first, and really realign with the culture and those core values that have made Gonzaga basketball so great for so long. And so what we've developed was really a way to scale that model, those 15-minute conversations, to not only teams across the country, but also corporate teams as well. And so our main goal is to help teams enhance communication and align their actual culture with stated values. A lot of times we have these cute values on the wall, but we don't actually behave every day in alignment with those and put it into action. And so we feel like a lot of this sports psychology, mental performance, team culture work doesn't have to be something that, we do team retreats and we do a deep dive, but it should be something that it's bite-sized, consistent, embedded into just how we operate as a company or as an athletic team. And so that looks like providing coaches or managers, let's say, with the slide decks to actually lead conversations on their own. So it's not dependent on an outside consultant like myself. I can still come in and do that when needed, but this is something that really can be self-sustained, so that really for the long term, teams are not only able to prioritize higher performance, but also their well-being.
Okay, and then so is there a platform that they go to, or is it
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, so what we provide is we have an online content library that has hundreds of different, it's kind of like a Netflix slide decks. So with like a video clip, maybe I'm going to say Christian McCaffrey, and he's talking about a relevant maybe athlete or coach, or maybe it's a movie clip. And so this one that comes to mind, we'd give them a clip of Christian McCaffrey talking about finding the balance between dissatisfaction and gratitude. And then we give in that slide deck a couple of different questions to prompt conversation in small and large groups. And then we always end with a tool. So great, after you've talked for 15 minutes, you've learned from each other, you've reflected. Now here's a strategy to put this into action. So for example, to help them be more grateful or present in the moment. So they all end with a challenge. We have a content library for that. And then for a lot of our corporate clients, we even make a customized portal. So we'll give them 2 step back sessions per month that are tied directly to their company values, or a communication session that's tied to our behavioral assessment to help them reflect on how their behaviors are getting in the way of maybe their performance as a team. So content library online, and then we train through a brief training. It should take only 30 minutes for leaders to learn how to lead the step backs.
Okay, and then actually, are you doing this in person with the training, or is it just
We can do everything online. That being said, for any of our local clients or depending on budget, we can come and do a kickoff session where we do maybe at their team retreat. We could do a 90-minute session to really kick off the whole process, but then everything is done virtually. So it's really easy to use wherever people are.
And so it's all off of the website. Is there like an app for it as well, like a mobile app, or is it just?
So we are developing a mobile app, but right now it's all on a website. But coming soon, we'll have a app for the end user. So not just the leader, but to be able to get push notifications of their tool for the week to work on and things of that nature.
Right. Okay. And then so the people are like, if they want to do stuff individually, then how does that work?
So our focus is really on at the group level because there are so many, and I used to do this myself. I would meet one-on-one with either coaches or the athletes, and there are plenty of mental performance coaches out there that do amazing work. And so our goal is to really provide the tools to have those group sessions to work in alignment and scale and sustain the work maybe an individual would already be doing, but we don't really provide individual sessions.
And so, like with these mental health coaches, are they like, do you have employees or you have like just partners that you work with?
Yeah, so there's actually just 3 of us on our team right now, but for them, we would really provide them with the resource to use on their own. And so I'm glad you brought up like a mental performance coach. This could be something that's even a resource for them to use to scale the work they are doing. So for example, before Extra Mile, I was doing mental performance coaching by myself. I'd come in, I'd work with a team, do a hour workshop. Everyone would be all excited about confidence, my talk on it or something, and then they'd forget about it a week later. So this step back session system could be something that mental performance coach leaves with their respective team after they go to sustain the work and those conversations of whatever their workshop was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And then basically you're a national company, so you can, like you said, I mean, it's because of now being able to be virtual and online, it helps open up different markets for you.
Exactly. So really whether it's on the corporate side or athletic side, any team that wants to be high performing, achieve great things is a good fit. I mean, we have construction companies, we have banks that are clients, we have architecture groups. It's a wide array, but it all started within athletics. And that's, I would say, only about 30% of our clients at the moment, because we've really seen a lot of it take off on the corporate side, but we'll get back.
And sometimes you have that pivot. So basically anybody that wants to go the extra mile, they got to come to you, right?
Exactly. You want your team to communicate better and align, your culture with your values. Let's go.
So how do people find you?
On our website, or they can shoot me an email, LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll repost this on those sites, but yeah, just reach out to me directly. I can be your gal.
Okay, and what's the website? Is it extramilelink.com?
So it's extramileinstitute.com.
Institute.com. Okay, my bad.
The tricky one to spell, so make sure you're not respelling.
So no EMI.com. That was already taken.
No, I wish. I know, right? extramileinstitute.com.
No, that's great. And so you can find us at alumnidirect.com. The podcast is on our YouTube channel as well as across all the different networks, Spotify and Apple. And each week we have great guests like Taylor to talk about their journey and kind of, as I said earlier, give those nuggets, because it's such a major issue. We really want to help athletes. I mean, I always say help at least one, but we love to help as many as we can. So we definitely encourage to listen and watch these episodes across different channels. So Taylor, this has been great. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Great chatting.
My pleasure.